When I first bought the land, I wasn't thinking about homeowners associations, property committees, or anyone trying to tell me what I could or couldn't do. It was a quiet patch of earth framed by tall pine trees far from the neat rows of houses where HOAs usually roam. The property had been in the back of my mind for years, a tucked-away dream spot where I could one day build something small and simple. For months, I sketched ideas for the cabin. Nothing grand, nothing flashy. I wanted a place where you could hear rain tapping the roof and bird song in the morning. A wooden deck that caught the afternoon sun, a little fireplace for cold evenings. Everything about the project felt personal, private, and entirely mine. I checked the deed and the property boundaries more than once, partly out of excitement and partly because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like unpleasant surprises. The map was clear. This land didn't belong to any planned community. No shared roads, no clubhouse, no pool maintenance fees, so when construction began, I didn't think twice about permissions or approval boards. The first weeks were bliss. I'd drive out on weekends to see the frame take shape, each nail and beam, bringing me closer to a little refuge I could call my own. The smell of fresh cut wood filled the air. The sound of hammers echoed through the trees. There was something pure about it, something almost old-fashioned, building with your own vision in mind. I remember one Saturday morning in particular. I stood there on the raw, unfinished deck, looking out at the forest. The sun filtered through the leaves, and I felt this wave of satisfaction wash over me. I had done everything right. Bought the land fair and square, confirmed the boundaries, even checked county records. I thought I was untouchable in the best way possible. Nobody's business but mine. That confidence made me a little naive, I'll admit. When you're out there surrounded by nature, it's easy to forget how far some organizations will go to claim control. I figured the HOA world was something that belonged to suburbs and gated communities. That was a whole different universe from my property. So, I poured myself into the work. I picked out reclaimed wood for the floors, imagining how the grain would look after a few winters. I chose a rustic deep green paint for the exterior, thinking it would blend into the trees. The more I planned, the more I felt like I was carving out a piece of the world where I could finally breathe. Every time I drove away at night, leaving the cabin hallphone, I felt a pull to come back, not just to finish it, but to live in that space I was creating back then. The thought of an HOA showing up on my doorstep with demands and fines would have sounded absurd. They weren't even on my radar. I believe my boundaries, both physical and legal, were impenetrable. I believe my cabin was mine alone, safe from outside interference. I never expected trouble. The cabin was coming along beautifully, and I was excited to finally have a quiet retreat. Then one morning, as I checked the mail, I found an official-looking envelope from the Homeowners Association. I hesitated before opening it. What I didn't expect was to see a demand for payment. A $30,000 fine for violating their rules. My heart sank. $30,000 for what? I scanned the letter carefully. It said my cabin was built without their approval, violated setback rules, and didn't meet community aesthetic standards. But something didn't sit right. I wasn't part of any HOA community. I had checked my deed, the county records, everything. This land was outside of any jurisdiction they claimed to oversee. I immediately called their office, hoping to clear up the mistake. As days passed, more letters arrived, each one more aggressive than the last, repeating the same threats. I began to worry about the impact on my credit, my property rights, my future. I reached out to neighbors and local officials, hoping to find someone who had faced similar issues. But nobody seemed to know much about this HOA claims. It became clear that the HOA was using intimidation tactics. They banked on people paying up out of fear or confusion rather than challenging the charges. I wasn't going to be one of those people. I started documenting everything, saving letters, recording phone calls, taking photos of the cabin and the surrounding land. I also began researching HOA laws and regulations in my county, determined to understand my rights and fight back. This wasn't just about a fine anymore. It was about standing up against an unfair system. After receiving the shocking $30,000 fine, I knew I couldn't just accept it blindly. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, and I was determined to find out the truth. I began by reviewing every document I could get my hands on: property deeds, boundary maps, county records, and HOA bylaws. The county records clearly showed that my land was well outside the limits of any planned community or homeowners association. I also discovered that the HOA bylaws define their jurisdiction very narrowly, limited strictly to a specific subdivision. My property was miles away from that, separated by undeveloped land and even a small creek. This meant that legally the HOA had no right to enforce rules or levy fines on my cabin or my land. The whole ordeal turned into a kind of battle of maps and legal definitions. After gathering all the evidence and confirming that the HOA had no legal authority over my property, I knew the next step was to take formal action. It wasn't enough to simply dispute the fine with phone calls or letters. The situation had escalated beyond that. The $30,000 demand wasn't just a mistake. It was a serious threat to my property rights and my peace of mind. I needed professional help to protect myself and fight back properly. We spent hours going over every document I had collected. Property deeds, county maps, HOA correspondence, bylaws, and the letters demanding the fine. My lawyer carefully reviewed the HOA claims and their legal basis, or rather the lack thereof. Together, we built a strong case proving the HOA overreach. Filing the lawsuit was both nerve-wracking and empowering. Once the lawsuit was filed, the dynamics changed. The HOA board suddenly grew quieter. Letters and phone calls from them slowed down. It was clear they hadn't expected someone to push back so firmly. Public opinion also started to sway. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a David versus Goliath battle between an individual homeowner and a powerful overreaching association. In the end, this legal battle was about more than a cabin or a fine. It was about the principle that organizations entrusted with authority must wield it responsibly and within the bounds of the law. The credibility of the HOA board was on trial, and the outcome would resonate far beyond my property lines.